this is Brian Rowe with Mythic MTG Tech number 198 here, where we're going to look at the top 10 cards in Modern. This list is a list that I've been working on for a while now. I got a lot of feedback from the local Magic the Seattleing community, and I'm going to dive into this here because a lot of people are just starting to get into Modern with the flood of Modern Masters 2015 cards coming into the market. Now, this is not a list of the top played cards by number. Anybody can go over to MTG Goldfish and look at these cards. This is a good way to get an idea of what's popular in the format and what to prepare for. But instead, I'm focusing more on the cards that define certain strategies and what it means to play against those cards in particular, or to play those cards. I have left some cards off of this list. I'm not dealing with lands. I'm going to talk about lands in a whole different video. Lands are extremely important and will take more than 5 to 10 minutes by themselves to talk about. I'm not talking about sideboard cards, and I put Blood Moon in that category. I know there's a lot of hype around Blood Moon right now since it just doubled in price. I would avoid them like the plague. This is a card that will be reprinted either in a dual deck, the next Modern Masters, something at a rare level. It has seen several reprints. It is important to the environment. But back onto the cards that I'm also not putting in as the flashy cards for just the last tournament. If it hasn't proved itself for several tournaments, then I'm not really going to talk about it. Lantern deck from GP Charlotte is fun, but it's a whole different topic altogether. Honorable mentions here. I've got to mention Collective Company. Even though it only has one tournament under its belt, it was in lots of different decks. I'm curious to see how people adapt to deal with Collective Company. Tasigur is gaining momentum as people start to play it in black and substitute out green in some of the control shells. It is a powerhouse. Serum Visions I've left out, and that's going to be kind of controversial, but I don't think that Serum Visions actually brings about a particular archetype. It can be played in control, it can be played in combo. I don't like it in aggro. I think it's a little bit slow for aggro, but I do definitely like it in combo and in control. It's an enabler. When you look at this card as a player coming from Legacy, you're like, how did such a bad card get so popular? It's because everything good, Ponder and Brainstorm, have been banned. So we're left with Serum Visions. When you come at it from Standard, though, it is a super powerful manipulation card for your library. Definitely, you need a playset of these if you're playing most blue decks. Glistener Elf I've left off here because it's really the type of card that does bring about a strategy, that Infect strategy, but Infect is a lot like some of the combo decks that I'm going to talk about, and it's a lot like some of the aggro decks. It could easily have made this top 10 list, and I will probably do a Modern Infect deck tech with a local Modern player here coming up in the next few weeks to few months. Goblin Guide did not make the list, which makes me a little sad, but it's not because he's not powerful. I just chose something else from the decks that Goblin Guide is in to represent that particular archetype. Goblin Guide is a powerhouse, an incredible card, one of the few cards that I will almost never cut from my red deck wins. I know people have cut him before in Legacy in favor of more instants or sorceries. I really like him, though. He has won me more games than anything else. The illusionary card advantage that you give your opponent often just leads to extra lands sitting in their hand as they're dead on turn 3 or turn 4. Siege Rhino is a little bit out of favor currently. It's important to know, though, that he buttresses the fair deck high end without getting into those decks that kind of ramp over the top. Card to definitely know and be able to play around. Dark Confidant is out of favor currently. Dark Confidant is a huge fan favorite. I've had lots and lots of people try to trade me for Dark Confidants recently because of the reprint and how low he is in price. He's going to jump back up in price. The issue with him currently, though, is that he's pretty bad in burn decks. He is also a little bit rough when people are playing removal that hits him and something else, like Electrolyze. I really like Dark Confidant. He is one of my favorite cards in Vintage, and he's very playable in Legacy. I believe he will come back in popularity in Modern also. Through the Breach here is another interesting kind of combo card that I think could have brought about an archetype here, but I went with a different kind of over-the-top ramp strategy. But being aware of this instant speed ramp combo card is very, very important. Number 10 spot here, I've got one that a few months ago could have been number 2 or number 3. It's Liliana the Veil. She is a powerhouse. She helps control slower combo decks. She's great against fair decks. One of the absolute best planeswalkers ever printed. She has fallen out of favor a little bit currently because of the 2-for-1 cards that are out there. Collective Company specifically plays very well against her as it drops 2 creatures in right away. I still really like her and am still trading for her at her current value. Things to know about Liliana the Veil. Number 1, when playing her, think about your options that are available on every single discard. You really need a long-term strategy with her. Number 2, it's often fine just to put her out, get rid of a creature, and let her take some damage off of you, especially when you're playing with a aggro deck on the other side of the table. She can take a lot of pressure off even if you can't keep her alive. She's actually very strong against burn also. If you can just up her and start to get them to discard their lightning bolts out of their hand, you often get a 2-for-1 or a 3-for-1 out of her. If you can get her out on second turn, it's where she really shines. She was strongest back when Deathrite was legal. I have not seen a deck really take advantage of a mana dork to drop into her on turn 2 since that time period. And I think that's when she's going to shine again, is when there's either strong mana acceleration or the environment slows down a little bit from where it is currently. In the number 9 spot here, I've got Hand Destruction in the form of both Thoughtseize and Inquisition of Kozilek. Both of these cards are powerful, and which one's getting played more really affects the metagame. Thoughtseize is pretty bad against burn decks, but it's the best against a diverse field of combo. It pulls out all of your combo pieces. On the other hand, Inquisition is much better against cheap combo decks, those combo decks that have a very low mana curve, and against burn. I actually sideboard Inquisitions in my Legacy deck to switch them in against decks like Rug Delver. The card is very, very strong against both tempo and against faster aggro decks. Number 8 spot here, I've got the card that may top many other people's list. It's Tarmogoyf. This has got to be one of the most boring cards to play for me personally, although I play him all the time because he's really, really good. The reason that Tarmogoyf is so good is that he blanks one of the better removal spells in the environment. Take a guess at what that removal spell is. You're going to see it later on in the list. Tarmogoyf with fetch lands, instants and sorceries, and creatures coming out into the graveyard very, very early is usually at least a 3-4 and often much larger than that. If you're playing a deck with Lilianas, you can often get a Planeswalker in there. Being able to deal with Tarmogoyf as a clock is very important in your combo decks. If you can't race a Tarmogoyf on turn 2, then your combo deck is too slow. If you've got an aggro deck where everything cannot get around Tarmogoyf, you've got to have damage that goes to the face, some type of evasion, or removal that removes Tarmogoyf. There's great ways to remove Tarmogoyf out there. One of the cards that didn't make this list but could have easily is Abrupt Decay, which is one of my favorite ways to get rid of Tarmogoyfs. The number 7 spot here, I've got Chord of Calling, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about Collective Company here, and even mention Kitchen Finks. Chord of Calling is a super powerful instant speed. Yes, instant speed tutor. It's very inexpensive right now, or at least was until this last weekend, because it was reprinted in M15. It is a card that allows you to play a toolbox in your deck. So you have a bunch of 1-ofs in your deck that become 5-ofs in your deck. If you need a Kitchen Finks early against that burn deck so that you can block that Goblin Guide and stay alive, you've got 5 chances to draw that Kitchen Finks. Chord of Calling is also playing really well with the current Collective Company decks. Collected Company gets those creatures out there so that you can pay the convoke cost. Long-term, Chord of Calling is going to continue to go up and be a dominant force in Modern. The number 6 spot here, I've got Karn Liberated, and I know I wasn't going to talk about land, but I can't talk about this deck Urzatron without at least mentioning the land. This is the ultimate ramp deck right now, outside of maybe Titan Bloom, which is really a combo deck. The ability to go over the top, to curve into 7 and 8 casters in your first 4 turns is incredible. You have to be able to deal with this deck because of the raw power. There are lots of ways to deal with this deck. One of those is be a combo deck that goes off before they're able to get to Karin or Ugin or Worm Coil Engine. Another way to deal with this particular deck is to play some type of land destruction that targets that Urzatron. Although they usually get at least one use out of it, so you have to also have a way to deal with these giant permanents that come out. When dealing with the Planeswalkers, there aren't great choices. Wormcoil Engine has some solid removal that hits it. Being able to exile the Wormcoil Engine is a great answer. Decks that can't exile it, though, often just lose to Wormcoil Engine. The number 5 spot here, I've got Cryptic Command, and several people I know would have left Cryptic Command off of this list. But as long as Cryptic Command is being played of, even as a one-of in top-tier decks, it defines where the top of the curve is for mid-range decks and what control decks can really do. When you are able to live long enough to play a Cryptic Command, you start to take over the entire game. Countering a spell and drawing a card is the most common use of Cryptic Command. When you get into that lockdown control environment, it just means no one else can get back in. But the other modes in Cryptic Command are often missed by people, and really good players notice those opportunities to make tempo plays, where you counter a spell and you return a land that comes into play tap and put your opponent behind the curve for where you are. This is the only card that I've got a deck list for in here because it really illustrates what's possible with control. This is my bonus list. I know I've talked about this in the past. This is Patrick Chapin's 9th place GP finish in Charlotte. Amazing deck. Very interesting deck. It was previewed on SCG several months ago. It had done well in some of the dailies. This is playing 4 copies of Cryptic Command. When you can play 4 copies of Cryptic Command and miss the top 8 by tie breaks only, you have put together a very strong control deck, but control decks are viable in the environment. And something to notice about this particular control deck is the amount of creature removal it has in it. Terminates are in here as a 4-of. Terminate is targeted instant speed creature removal. There's a lot of reasons that you need to be able to remove creatures at instant speed. I'm going to get to those a little more later on in this list. But take a look at this if you're a hardcore control player. This is a very interesting deck. I've put this together. I've had a lot of fun playing it. I like the inclusion of the commands here also. Being able to snap back a command feels so good. Number 4 spot here, I've got Snapcaster Mage, which I was just talking about. There are so many powerful 1 and 2 casters in this environment, in the modern environment, in the legacy environment, and in vintage environment, that Snapcaster Mage is just a house in all of those formats. I started playing this guy back when he was legal in Standard and have enjoyed playing him ever since. If you can get a diversity of different cards into your graveyard quickly, he's super powerful. But even in your mid-range control decks, where you just get a few cards into your graveyard, being able to bring back the ones that matter for your particular matchup basically gives you 1 to 4 extra copies of each of those cards in your graveyard. A lot of people think that Snapcaster Mage has reached its zenith right now. I see Snapcaster Mage as the new Dark Confidant. He's easily got 20 or 30 more dollars of growth in him before he's reprinted. After he's reprinted, which may be as far as 18 or 24 months from now, then he'll drop back down the way that Dark Confidant has, although I don't think he's going to go as low as Dark Confidant is, because that will be a second printing for one of the most played cards. He's also a blue card. Blue players are used to paying extra for their control cards, and that keeps the value up. Back onto the playability though, the diversity of cards that you have access to in Modern is so large that this ability to bring back sorceries and instants is a powerhouse and always will be in Modern. In the number 3 spot here, I've got removal that defines the current state of Modern. When your opponent can spend 1 white mana to exile your creature must be amazing if you're spending 3 or more mana on it. This card warps the environment to the point that lots of 4 and 5 casters are simply not playable because of how good this removal is. Yes, the removal does potentially ramp your opponent. Often that doesn't matter in the game. I will say that this is a more balanced card than Swords to Plowshares in Legacy, but it has that same format warping capability. When you look at putting creatures into your deck and you wonder why some of your favorite 4 or 5 casters from Standard never make it into Modern, Path to Exile is the reason why. Not to mention it plays well with Snapcaster Mage. It's so good to snap back a path. The number 2 spot here, I've got Splinter Twin, and this really represents the combo-based decks that deal with creatures. Wizards has allowed combo to exist in the environment as long as it is predicated on creatures in some way. They finally removed Birthing Pod, and I know that was controversial. Splinter Twin is the new creature-based combo deck that's really accepted. And if Splinter Twin ever goes away, we may see a return to Kiki Jiki or other alternatives, but it's why cards like Path to Exile or other main deck removal like Terminate and Abrupt Decay are so important. The most important thing to remember about Splinter Twin is where the casting cost is. At the 4 casting cost is when Wizards is okay with combo decks consistently being able to kill you. Now, there isn't a way to easily search up Splinter Twin, but with the card manipulation cards that are legal in the environment, it's not that difficult to find. So you really need to be careful about tapping out in that 3, 4, 5 casting cost range when if you are on the draw, it's allowing your opponent to untap at 4 and possibly play a combo that is going to cause you huge problems. It's one of the reasons that I like cards like Thoughtseize and Electrolyze so much. Thoughtseize in particular allows me to figure out whether it's safe for me to tap out to put that threat down on the board on turn 3 or turn 4 or turn 5. Electrolyze I also like because it helps control some of the combo pieces, those with 1 toughness, but it also allows me to do some damage while not tapping out, while leaving my control mana available. In the number 1 spot here, I've got a classic from Alpha and Beta, Lightning Bolt. This card is nuts. It has built the aggro archetypes. Whenever Lightning Bolt is legal in an environment, with the exclusion of maybe Vintage, although I find this even as playable in Vintage, it has a defining effect on the environment. Spellskite would make a lot of other people's lists, but it's because Lightning Bolt is so popular that Spellskite is playable main deck. Lightning Bolt is great removal, and its great damage per mana ratio makes it an aggro card and a control card. It can be flashed back by Snapcaster Mages, and as a defining card in the format, if Wizards ever really wanted to shake things up, they would consider banning Lightning Bolt, although they would never do that because this is such a popular card and it's a rather fair card. It's one of those cards that laughs in the face of control cards like Remand. Put the 1 caster back in my hand for 2 mana? No problem, I'll cast it again. This is a well-designed, good card in Modern. I'm very glad it's in Modern, but it does warp the format a lot. If you're playing a combo deck, you need to always be aware of their opportunity to break up your combo with Lightning Bolt. If you're playing against an aggro deck, you have to assume in many cases that you're down 3 or 6 life when they've got 2 or 3 cards in hand that could possibly be Lightning Bolts. This is a card that defines the way that you're going to play. Now that doesn't mean that you need to step back and always play conservatively. Sometimes you need to play into your only available outs, which are, if they have Lightning Bolt, I'm dead, but if they don't, this is how I can win the game. be aware of it, and then figure out how to play around it, or whether you simply need to ignore the power of this incredible card. Thanks, guys. This has been Brian Rowe with Mythic MTG Tech. Thank you to everybody who's over there on Patreon. The angels are in the mail. I will have angels available for people to purchase a little bit later on this month. I've got some great videos coming up, including a speculation video next. And I'm taking suggestions for the 200th video. Thank you guys so much. Take care.